All right, so what are some topics of conversation that you can talk about? General topics of conversation. What things should you focus on so that you can be inspired to go in all these different directions? You want to learn the art of improvisation, okay, so that you can think on your feet. You know, we talked about the free association principle, but I'm going to give you some general guidelines and elements, okay, that you can follow so that you don't run out of things to say. All right, no more excuses. How about starting with some comments or observations about what she is wearing? So perhaps she's wearing some kind of a blazer, okay, that makes her look like a French art curator. Now, depending on what this girl is like, you might get a different response. If she's the cultured, artsy, intellectual type, she might say, and she's super witty, she might maybe make a joke about, yeah, I mostly deal with impressionist art, blah, 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 ha, ha, ha. And you might say, oh, Monet, Manet, Gauguin, Degas. And if she's not, she might just kind of chuckle and say, ha ha ha, I've never actually been to France. Why does this look French? And maybe you'll get on the topic of France and how you went on this university exchange to France, which by the way I did, and what that was like. And maybe she's in her 4th year of university and she is doing some kind of a study abroad program in the summer, and she doesn't know whether to go to Japan or Italy or Australia. Right?
Excuse me, are you a doctor?
No.
Who are you?
I'm a dentist.
Are you a dentist? I haven't had a cleaning in like 6 months. I've been a naughty boy.
What up, Casanovas? Before we continue, I just wanted to let you know that I'm working on an exciting new product that's going to drop in the next month that's going to teach you everything you need to know about approaching women. So, if you want to be the first to get notified and stay in the loop about launch specials, then join the VIP list and sign up in the link in the description below. Alright, now let's get back into it.
I'd give you a lollipop, but you probably don't need one. You probably have a cavity.
How can you draw those conclusions so fast?
So you can comment about her appearance, right? Maybe she's shopping and you comment something about her shopping bags. Maybe it's some accessories that she's wearing. And that can, by the way, lead to physicality. Let's say she's got some funky bracelet and you're like, oh, hey, you just kind of gently grab her hand. That's a really cool bracelet. Where'd you get that? Oh, interesting, Malaysia. Oh, no, I haven't been, but I have a buddy who, he was in Indonesia and he was supposed to go to Malaysia, but, they found some kush in his bags and he went to jail for life. Okay, it could be about her hairstyle, it could be about her makeup, it could be about her shoes, it could be about the fact that she's eating a falafel, it could be about anything related to her appearance or to her immediate situation. You know who you look like?
Sofia Vergara.
I do it, yes.
A more Portuguese version though.
What? I look like who?
Like a Portuguese version of Sofia Vergara.
No, that's not the first time I've gotten it before.
Now, you could also talk about the environment. Depending on whether you met her on the street, or you met her at a bar, or a nightclub, or at a block party, there's always something interesting or engaging in the environment that you can talk about. Maybe this hipster bar that you're at has got this opium den vibe to it, right? With some weird plants and cool lighting and spacey art, whatever, right? Maybe it reminds you of psychedelics. Maybe it reminds you of these opium dens that you read about in the 20s, that you watched in this film called Once Upon a Time in America. So you can really just share these things and let them evolve organically. Maybe you can talk about the cocktails at the bar. Oh, this one is blue, reminds you of Blue Lagoon in Iceland, but apparently it's really dirty, according to this girl I met from Iceland. Bam, 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 bam. Things are just evolving, evolving, evolving. Maybe you talk about this funky looking couple on the dance floor and how they're really tearing it up. They got some really funky moves, and how, you're not a very good dancer, right? But you use self-deprecating humor to show her that you can still dance regardless, even though you're not that good, okay? And that kind of, that's endearing, and that kind of inspires her to dance too. And maybe as a result, you guys end up on the dance floor where you happen to comment on the disco ball that's there, okay? Because it's a hipster bar and they have a disco ball for ironic effect. Stuff you watched, read about, or heard about. So maybe you read an interesting article about international divorce law in this Economist magazine, or this cool book called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, and it inspired you in all these philosophical, introspective ways. Or maybe you watched this cool documentary about the culture of collecting sneakers. Or maybe you heard about this yoga retreat or spiritual retreat outside of LA where people drop ayahuasca, and it's kind of like this prolonged therapy session of years compressed into 6 hours.
I like the look. I like living thug life.
You seen those thug life videos?
Yeah. Totally.
What was the one with the little black kid? Have you seen that one?
I've seen all of them. I'm like actively on Vine, so.
Fuck, he's like, oh, the guy's like, say hello to the camera. And he's like, hello, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Maybe you know some people that have invested into Bitcoin, but they've lost a lot of money and it hasn't bounced back up. And you're wondering, is it a good time to be investing into cryptocurrencies at all? These are, again, also things that you've experienced in some way, but not necessarily firsthand. So again, you've read about them, watched something about it, or heard about it through secondhand experience, as opposed to actually have done it yourself.
Are you Norwegian?
No, I'm Russian. Well, there was this really cool Vice documentary about the Vikings of Iceland or something.
Personal experiences. So these are things that you have experienced in real life firsthand, not necessarily stuff you've read about or have seen in a film, but they don't necessarily make up an integral part of your identity. They're not they're not things that have spanned over long durations of time, like you having lived in a country for 6 years. Instead, these are just fleeting occurrences that you may have experienced at different points in your life that obviously contribute to shaping who you are as a person, but not at such an integral core level.
Where's the tequila? I don't mind.
Alright, I can't drink tequila. It reminds me of when I used to go to those all-inclusive resorts in the Dominican when I was younger, and we got fucked up off of really cheap tequila, so it left a really bad taste in our mouth.
Maybe you attended a wine tasting class. Maybe you checked out a jazz festival when you were in Montreal. Maybe you were at the Monaco Grand Prix a couple of years ago, but you're not really into cars. It was more for your buddy's bachelor party thing that you guys organized in Europe. Personal identity stuff, where you were born, what your dad does, maybe you were bullied in school, maybe you went to a special arts school when you were a kid, you might have immigrated a couple of times. Stuff that's very personal to your identity, not necessarily some general personal experiences that you've had, but haven't necessarily shaped your identity. Perhaps they've added to it, like everything does inevitably, but they're not core to your identity, like your ethnicity, where you were born, maybe your profession, etc.
We're working on a startup, so it's like 24/7.
A startup?
Startup, like a business.
Oh, okay, yeah. What's your business? Do you want to talk about it?
Know what?
Do you want to talk about it? Is it hush hush?
Kind of hush hush.
Okay.
But it's in the dating industry. That's all I can say. Not on the matchmaking side, no.
Okay.
More like on the community.
You can share some views or opinions that you have. You don't want to start giving unsolicited advice unless maybe it's in like a playful way where you're like, no, I'm not gonna let you eat that street meat on the street when you guys are coming out of the bar, okay? Which also puts you into this like leader, dominant assertive frame, but that's a whole other conversation. And look, all these things that you're sharing are going to span a whole spectrum of different topics, whether it's food, culture, art, science, math, okay, pop culture, music. Now you can get more technical about certain topics if, like we said, the girl is very receptive, genuinely curious, super engaged, asking you more questions and potentially understands more about that specific topic. So if you want to get into politics, and the girl is either very interested in politics or was a political journalism major, right? Then, you know, there's something to work with, right? But you don't want to get into a discussion about politics and the girl doesn't really know much and doesn't really have any, you know, strong opinions or positions one way or another, right? You're just going to overwhelm her or maybe bore her. Now, same thing with food. You can start broader, more surface level, maybe talk about the difference between, you know, Middle Eastern cuisine and Asian cuisine, and you might prefer Asian cuisine more.
Let's just run away to Jamaica. Fuck it.
Let's do it.
Of us living the good life on the beach, playing dominoes, eating mangoes. Now they also have a restaurant, like a pretty vibrant restaurant scene. So
I mean, the food in Cuba sucks.
we have a lot to explore.
Yeah. I mean,
It sucked? You didn't like it?
no, it was horrible. The Cuban food is disgusting. But I love
¿Por qué?
But if she's a food blogger and you happen to love watching the Food Network, then you guys have a lot more to talk about. You can maybe talk about Anthony Bourdain's show No Reservations or Parts Unknown, and maybe how, you know, your dad loves to cook and makes all these, you know, elaborate dishes, and it's inspired you to cook, and you subscribe to this magazine and you try out all these recipes, and you and your ex used to you know, experiment a lot, and she comments about all these restaurants that she's reviewed, right? So then you can get a lot more detailed. And remember, this is a muscle. This is a skill that you have to cultivate. So as you have more and more interactions with girls, or as you socialize with people, more with people in general, you're naturally going to develop this skill. You're naturally going to get better at improvising, at, you know, coming up with all these different conversational topics. I also encourage you guys to read more, to, you know, watch more films and documentaries, you know, learn more about pop culture, just generally show a greater interest or curiosity about the world around you, have more life experiences, and that's going to give you a whole broad range of topics to talk about. And of course, as you get desensitized to the social pressure and novelty of these situations, of the idea of talking to girls, and as you develop yourself in general, you will be a lot more at ease, and so, you know, less in your head, and so it'll be easier to just flow. So to summarize, some of the stuff that you can talk about are comments about her appearance, comments about the environment, personal experiences, personal identity, stuff that you've read about, heard about, seen, and all these general categories can span a whole range of different topics, you know, whether it's art, culture, photography, math, economics, finance, pop culture, travel, food, blogging, etc., etc. So there is a whole range of macro and micro categories and topics, you know, to talk about, that you're going to learn to just navigate organically depending on the circumstances and the context. And the more that you experience in life and read about, and the more you know, immerse yourself into these social situations where you're forced to improvise and you're forced to engage in stimulating conversations, the better it is that you're going to get at it. Don't worry if you fuck up. Learn to savor every interaction, every connection you make, because these are the experiences that are going to shape you, that are going to define you in your pickup journey. So don't worry if you're not naturally this great conversationalist. You know, you'll learn over time how to intuitively navigate the spectrum of topics and categories, and how to calibrate and, you know, gauge the context and the circumstances. And over time, as you put yourself into more of these social situations, as you interact with more girls, with more groups, just generally navigate these social dynamics and push yourself to improvise and to free associate, you are going to naturally develop the skill. It's going to sneak up on you.